Welcome to this podcast episode. Today I'm talking with Andrea Klepsch. Willkommen, Andrea.
Vielen Dank. Thank you very much, Erno. I'm very excited to talk with you
Yeah,
about sustainability and future and what we come to.
yes, I agree. And in the preparation of this conversation, I learned about the talk you gave in Zwolle at the Hogeschool Windesheim. And can you tell a bit how this went? What was it about?
Well, it was the opening lecture of a 3-year program focusing on resilience, actually. And Maria Garcia Alvarez, who initiated it, is a lecturer at the university and really driven by her mind and her heart to help creating a sustainable and maybe even heartful future. And there were 150 students, and it was really interesting. She introduced the concept of the IDGs, the Inner Development Goals, and my part was to share from my entrepreneur perspective, how sustainability and how IDGs come together.
And that is a great point because I really want to learn about that part because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs do not know yet about IDGs, first of all, and not how
Yeah.
IDGs and the SDGs like cooperate, how they connect with each other. First things first, you are an entrepreneur, like you just mentioned. And if I have it right, you have at least two businesses, but your main business is Modem Conclusa.
Yes, yes. Modem Conclusa was founded 30 years ago by myself. I have a marketing, public relations background, and as a young girl, I was excited to work for companies like Campari and other international companies. But it is in my soul to care for other people and for nature, for beings. So when I was, how old was I? 27. I said, I don't want to invest my power, my brain, my heart into doing marketing for products, which I like. I still drink Campari. It's a good example. I'm not against it, but is this what I want to increase, to inspire? And I said, no, I want to inspire and support companies who go and in those days, we talked about the ecological and social paths. We didn't talk about sustainability yet, although the concept of sustainability was already around, but it was more within the politics and UN. And not so within the business. So I founded this agency, and actually I personally, besides my strong natural spirituality, I'm not really so much into religious spirituality. I'm more into nature spirituality. I think everybody has to find his niche or his path or her path. I was very much inspired by the Gaia concept. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-hmm.
James Lovelock
Mm-hmm.
and by Fritjof Capra, an Austrian-born American physicist who wrote the Tao of Physics. And I was not very good in physics at school, but I read this, and there I really got into my brain what I had into my heart, what I had in my heart, that life is interwoven. interwoven. It's this web of life. Uh, and this sort of was the beginning of my path on this deeper ecology.
I think I'm on a similar path. It just takes me longer to it took me long maybe to make the connection between what's in the heart and what's in my mind. But I'm also curious because didn't you feel like you were pretty early on that concept and that time?
Mm.
Didn't you feel lonely in that area when you moved away from the standard kind of like crow concept and businesses and corporates into focusing on the ecological and social parts?
Um, Not lonely, but when I talked about that this is my path in business, uh, many people thought you're crazy. There's a German word, bist eine Spinnerin. You're a little bit weird, nuts. But I didn't feel that they were assaulting me. I just felt, okay, you go your path. And one of my, I don't want to say principle, but I don't know a better word, is to follow the resonance. And I had good resonance. I met people, besides I read this book about Capra, I met people who were open-minded. And so I was in this web of people who thought differently, who did business differently, although it was a small web. But what really made me happy is that from year to year, when I talked about my philosophy of business, almost every year I had greater resonance. I met more people who thought similar, who inspired me. So this is sort of a slowly, organically growing movement. And yes, I was early, but I was okay. I trusted my inner feelings.
Yeah, and trust is, I think,
Oh.
trust and courage are like skills that's in the IDGs. Um, when did you, because you were alone, but you felt not lonely, but you were growing. When did you hire your first employee? When did somebody came into the company?
Actually, this was 30 years ago. I started 32 years ago by myself. The agency was called Andrea Klepsch, my name, and it was me. And then I needed some support by journalists, and I found a person who was a good journalist and had also an open mindset. And then actually we were two and three, and then I founded this GmbH. I don't know what this is in English. LTD, similar.
Yeah,
Uh,
INC, Inc. Maybe
Inc. Yeah,
BV in
yeah.
Nederlands. Yeah.
It's a company body, and from then on, it was not this movement always up. It was also downs, and I had, or I didn't had to, but as I'm not fundamental, and I believe in the individual speed of development. There's an
Mm.
individual tempo. Some people sort of you inspire them today and tomorrow they change completely, and sometimes it is a development, a healthy development. And I always and still don't talk about greenwashing or things like that, because everybody starts at a certain point and then it evolves. I really love the word evolve. Uh, and I was in the first 10 years of my agency, I was working for a New Zealand company. And in the terms we talk now about sustainability, they were not sustainable, but the people were very open-hearted. I don't know if you've ever met New Zealanders. They are completely different to Germans. So open and completely different to Americans. And it was meat, the topic. Meat, I'm not bashing meat nowadays, but it helped me to grow my agency. It helped me to make experiences. And even with them, I could talk about ecological issues. But this company was the financial base of my company. And I was doing more innovative or supporting more innovative, more sustainable companies with less fee, with less money. So it was sort of a subsidiary within my company. But I'm not fundamental. I have to say that. And I think that's very important. Fundamentalism is destroying growth, is destroying development. Because if you bash somebody and say, oh, this is only greenwashing, they give up again. If you say, are you sure? Maybe this is only the first movement. Is this enough? I think it makes a difference. What do you think if you not only compensate CO2 carbon emissions, if you also start thinking within the company to educate your people different? That's what meine Haltung, what is that in English? My understanding is. So I don't know if you. I'm sure there's a different perspective. Maybe I add one thing. The name modem conlusa is a unusual name for a marketing communication agency, and what it means, modus from the Latin, is the way you do things. And I think the way we do things are very individual, and conclusa comes from concludere. I want to invite the people to draw their own conclusions. I do not want to persuade. I want to invite to open your thinking.
That's a very different way of doing marketing, right? Normally,
Yes,
marketing is about persuasion.
Yes.
The book, the big things book, Persuasion, for example.
Yes.
It's about playing tricks with the mind of people, like
Yes.
keeping them on their phone or in the app, or using products that they really don't need, for example, or just buying new products because it's in fashion. Well, you actually don't need it, and it's just short-term thinking. You had an education in the US for communication.
Yes, I'm a practical person. I learn by doing.
Yeah.
And I started this path in marketing and communication with a traineeship and didn't study. And then I felt I need to broaden my horizon and was working for a big PR marketing agency in the States, which really opened my mind and teach me critical thinking, because the Americans are very persuasive.
Exactly.
So it was, sometimes it is really good if you learn the opposite what you really want to do, because it strengthens you. And I was, how old was I? 25 years old, and all my friends were students and had their high life, and I had to feel I have to go to the States and have my own high life in the States. But it turned out to be a really good education by doing what you don't want to do.
That's a good point. I think I've mostly tried to avoid that part in my education.
Yeah, it's when we come touch a little bit in our conversation the IDGs, one of the important skills I think is perspective thinking
Hmm.
in IDG 3. And I think this is very important because in our Western world, we are more head people. And maybe this is a good opener for entering the IDGs. And perspective thinking for me means really dive into the perspective of the other person, learn more about it. And that's a bit what I want. You don't need to adapt the perspective, but you need to learn more about it. And what I learned in the States was not only how not to do it, I also learned a lot how to do it. Uh,
Yeah.
but this perspective thinking, um, I don't know how this is in your business. Do you also often meet people, you say something and they immediately say no and say their perspective before they have entered and really understood what you are saying?
Yeah. I think I think the way I look at it, I just wrote it down in my journal this morning, is when the way I look at things is very different than most people do, of having, looking the way less is more, or uh, try to give more, or have a clear vision on what is enough, for example. When I ask people, they really don't know what is enough, right? So they just do and discontinue, and they have remarks about how much money they need to make, or how many hours they need to work, and I don't understand. You have enough, and why do you think in a way that you still need to do more and more and more, while at the same time um, neglecting other parts of your life, right? There's so much more to do than just focusing on how much you earn or how many hours you work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I do is to look at other people's perspective. Is this podcast, for example, right? To talk with people. Obviously, they're mostly in the kind of like direction that I'm thinking. So I don't have people who are very extremist here, but in general, by asking a lot of questions, I learn more, and I read a lot of books to see different perspectives, or on history, learn about history, how things went in the past, why we are here, where we are now. And this, similar to you, gives me perspective and gives me an idea of um, what you could do differently and why I choose to do it my way.
That's a very important topic you're touching here with what is enough. I think it's the most important. I'm not sure why it is so hard for us to feel this enough. Maybe for us Germans, and maybe I could also say for us Europeans, it might be all the fear we have in ourselves, the fear of the history, the even the fear of the last World War, and it is growing now again. When you talk to people, either they had parents who experienced World War II. I think the fear is rising, and what we uh, what we, and I know, me and us people who work with the IDGs, is helping to build again this trust, and it comes from there is enough.
Yeah.
There is this German scientist and very famous for circular economy, Michael Braungart. I don't know if you know him, or your readers, listeners know him. When I first heard him, he said in our ecological businesses, we always feel there is not enough. And he said, in nature, there is always enough. And that's a sentence which since then is with me, and there is enough. Uh, and yeah, very good that you are reflecting on this and probably also practicing.
And having difficulty, right? Because it is, you live in a world where it's mostly about not enough, right?
Yeah.
Even I have discussions with my wife about this, and we are very different on this point. And I had a discussion this week. I had a meeting this weekend with a friend. We talked. It was a long time we saw, and I look at the things they do, and I don't know when they feel it is enough. Their enough is so different from what I believe is enough, right? But also, when you have already so much money, you think about, okay, so I need to work 32 hours because I'm not sure how we will do with our income in the next year. And I go like, you have enough. So why do you worry about that part? Why are you afraid of that part?
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with what we feel other people think about us, what we feel other people,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
they see us.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The fear, how they see us, and maybe that we lost so many skills. And here I'm not talking about the IDGs, I'm talking about practical things. What really enriched my life is I'm living in a small village with 8 farmers, and 4 of them are working organic bio. And I had the great luck that I could learn making cheese with them. And just the skill, I know how to make cheese or how to garden. I also help in growing potatoes and carrots and things like that. To have the skills strengthens me and brings me a bit more to enough, because I don't need to collect so much money uh, to have something on the table to eat, because I can grow things and I can harvest, and I know plants when I go on a walk. And this was already when I was a child. I cycled to schools, and when I cycled home from school, I always cycled through the fields or through the forest, and I brought berries, wild chive, or whatever. And it really helps you that you have this more, these skills which hey, they help you to manage your life. And these are basic skills. So this is another point in our discussion about enough, which I think would be very important to bring children back to the basic skills. They know now how to, they're much better in using tablets and iPhones and smartphones, but they have no idea about um, how to grow their food, how to milk a cow or a goat or something. And that really helps you to come to enough.
I agree. My dad was a carpenter, and when I was young and he was in a factory where he worked at that time, I loved the smell of wood and of wood glue.
Mm.
And it never went away. That whenever I smell this wood or wood glue, it just brings back so many memories. And my daughter just moved into a new house, and and we did things in our house, all these things we could do that the workers didn't do, to save money, but also because I think it's a lot of fun to do it with my daughter. And for example, she had like a shed, and we had to. Well, we didn't have to, but I thought it was easier for her to move the door of the shed to another side. So I suggested it to her and explained why I think, and she agreed. Her boyfriend, was hesitant because he's not really somebody who's really good with his hands. He doesn't really like that kind of work, but my daughter loves the kind of work, and we said, okay, we're going to do this together. So we're going to put in a new door and do this on our own, and we get it fixed. And I love that kind of thing because it's so it makes me so grateful to do this work with my daughter, but also when the result is, when you have it completed and you have a result, you go like, oh, I did this, I can do this.
Mm.
And I think it's the same thing. It makes you so much closer to experiencing enough because you think, okay, I don't have to buy everything. I can just create stuff. I can make stuff, right? So why should I worry about these things? And that's a sense that has always been in me. I can always do something
Mm.
with my
Mm.
hands. I shouldn't worry if there is no income or my job is gone. There's no new clients. I can do something. I always can do stuff.
Mm.
So enough is easy for me.
Mm. Mm. You're mentioning two very important points. The one is that with this skills, these basic skills, I call them, there's always a social interconnection. You just had the example with your daughter, and that we are social. For example, in my village, we can help each other. I can't learn everything. For example, maybe working with the wood, not, but there is somebody who can do. And if we help each other, then we are again a community. And whether it's within a family, you're doing things with your daughter, or do it with your neighbors. Uh, but I also feel this is relevant in companies, to be aware what are the skills of others. It's very important for the IDG collaborating. And maybe it might be helpful to experience this not only within the framework of what you're doing, whether you're a marketing person like I am, or in the finance industry, to do basic things together. We in our agency have every year two things we do together, which have nothing to do with communication. One is a social thing. We go together and help where help is needed. Last time we were cleaning up a public garden, a little park, and the city had not enough time and money to do it. So we said we do it. And we cleaned it up and we painted the benches and we did this together. And we experienced within our team, wow, this person is very practical. This is the great organizer. So you find different skills. And the other thing is we do once a year is learn something practical. We did once bread baking. Once we learned barista, which is a little bit more fashionable. You have to mix the things. I don't know what we will. Ah, yes, we wanted to do a herb. How would you say that? Go with a herb specialist outside in nature, so my team learns more what they could eat when they walk outside. There's so nature is laying our table. We just need to go outside and eat. And things like this would be important in companies. And when we consult our companies, we often suggest that.
Hmm.
That wouldn't it be a great investment to go outside of your own little company or big company and do something with teams outside?
Yeah, get outside the bubble.
Yeah, yeah, and meet each other in a different way.
Yeah, and it helps you to develop the social skills.
Exactly. And here we're again with the IDGs. That's part of it. I think it's my perspective to the IDG is that it is the best framework developed recently, not because, but one aspect why I think this is it brings it brings the light on skills we all have. I think there's not one skill we don't have as individuals. They're not trained. Maybe they're not in our awareness. And this basket is so great. And if you start with collaborating, you come to being. If you start with being, you come to thinking. It's again interwoven. And I made a very interesting experience with a Greek company. The Greek are very emotional, like the Mediterranean. And can you imagine? We had a one week working session there, and I started the meeting with 3 minutes silence, which was for them. And at the end of the week, I forgot it at one meeting, and they reminded me, hey, we need to start the meeting with silence, because they experience the value of settling down before you start a meeting. And these simple, I call them simple because they're really simple. We need courage to do this. We have in our agency Klangschale. What is that?
I don't know. This music instrument with when you
it's
hit
a
them,
bowl
good,
which you tick, which is used in the Tibetans.
Yes.
And some of my colleagues said, "Oh, it has to be in the cupboard." And I said, "No, it is in the middle of our meeting room. Even if somebody comes in and says, 'Are you esoteric?' I explain, no, we're not esoteric. It is the thing which helps you to calm down, to center ourselves, to open ourselves before a meeting."
Right. I am curious. First of all, how did you feel when you heard for the first time about the IDGs?
That can't be heard. It's this. I was struck. I immediately got into resonance, and it was shortly before the summit 22, 21? April, yeah. And I attended it together with my business partner. And I can tell you, it was the first online conference for 6 or 7 hours where I did not do emails parallel or turned off the camera and sneaked out and did things. It was so fascinating, so different. And as I said before, I think these are basic skills which we all have, or skills which we all have. So I went in resonance immediately, and I very much like how it is set up with the IDG practitioner, and that you meet, like we met at such a session, you meet people who are different, who are working in different areas, and it is so interesting to exchange with them. So it reminds me of other concepts I learned, like the deep ecology by Joanna Macy and the Norwegian philosopher Arne Naess, word is similar, but it was more philosophical, maybe a little bit more complicated. And the IDGs, it is so inviting. You see, I'm enthusiastic about the IDGs.
What I also experience when you talk about it with people who don't know about it, most of the time it clicks really fast. It's a really good framework that people can understand, and they feel that something like this is missing, has been missing for them for a long time.
Yeah, missing, or it was too much other things were above. I just heard that the World Organic Forum, this is a group around the world about organic agriculture, they put the IDGs on their agenda for this year's summit, which I think is great.
Yeah.
It must also just have, they went in, or got into resonance with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great word, resonance.
Yeah.
And when I looked at your website, I see many like bio companies that you work for. Do you feel, I have a discussion with a business partner that I work with, and he talks about, I think that we should also, look at the companies who really want to grow, become bigger, and feel it's not enough and want to make an impact and help them to make the impact. So, but they are used to talk in like an orange kind of language, like when they talk more about growth and people need to work harder and we need to make more money. So like orange kind of language. But if you talk with these people in like green kind of language, like, so how we make the world better and how it's good for ecology and how it's good for the social aspects, that these people don't understand. They cannot connect with these kind of emotions or words. How do you see? Do you have do you experience this? How do you see this?
Yes, I experience this because not everybody has this idealistic gene to make the world better, and for still many people the world is good, and actually it is still good. So I very often avoid the word to make the world better. I more ask the people, are you content how your company is working? Are you content with the interaction of within your company? My experience at the moment, might change again, is that the IDG have a similarity within the companies. There is a need that they want to have their own inner development. So I don't talk too much about making the world better. I talk more about how can we make your interacting more smooth, so everybody is content, everybody has enough. We had this before. There is more happiness within the company, that when you walk through a company, you should hear from here and there laughter. Do you hear enough laughter in your company? These are the door opening questioning I ask. And then if they say, oh no, laughing, we're not laughing, we're suffering. And if they think they want to make a difference there, you are very quickly into what the purpose of the company is. Is the purpose to grow? Is the purpose to make more money? Is the purpose to take more resources from the world or not? And it's a process where you can start from the inner of a company to the outer. And the organic company, you mentioned the focus of our company. they are from the outer to the inner, because these companies in 30 years, they're trying to grow organic agriculture or sustainable house constructing. But the process is so slow that they realize, hey, we have to do something within ourselves. So from the inner to the outer, from the outer to the inner.
And and I know that you have used, and you already mentioned this, but also in previous conversation we had, is that you use the IDGs now with some companies that you work with. How do you introduce it to these companies? And you mentioned that you ask this question, is there laughter? But if they say there's no, but they might ask, is this good for business? So if you introduce IDGs, how do you show them this is really good for business?
Maybe we are here again at the concept of resonance, where somebody is still on growth and how can I make more and how can I be better than my competitor and things like that. I think you have to wait another, don't know how many years. But what I realize, that the door is open within many, many, many companies to introduce them, and the leaders have experienced that they need a spiritual practice. That's one thing which amazes me always when you talk a little bit personal with the leaders of the companies. I'm very often astonished that they are practicing spiritual practices. And then if you come and say, have you heard about the IDGs? They say, no. Are you familiar with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals? Yes. And then you have a starting point where you can introduce them. And then the people are open. But I think it's wasted energy for us if we start, if we realize with a person is not opening, you can't introduce the IDGs. And we need patience. That's one thing which I wish I had, or others had a solution within the climate and biodiversity crisis. We have this SDG. In 2030, we have to achieve this and that. And 2030 is in 7 years. There's so much pressure. And it is right that there is pressure. But on the other hand, pressure sometimes paralyzes people. So how do we get out of this dilemma? For me, it is a very big dilemma. We need to say we have to act now, and within the IDGs, we have IDG 5, acting. But on the other hand, this pressure, is it really good? And we need patience. So
it's like a dynamic balance you need, right?
yeah.
So it's the book of Paul Barron's about good times and the best of times, the worst of times, and he talks about situations, 5 topics, and paints them in the situation if we go in the wrong direction and the situation if we go in the right direction, the possibilities and the things that's dangerous. And the way that because I spoke with him about the book, the way that I see it now is if you talk about one thing, right, it's really bad. People paralyze, right? So people don't know what to do. You don't see a perspective where you're going, how you can solve this. But if you talk about all the good things, like the technological solutions that there are, for example, to capture carbon from air or to store carbon somewhere, or to everybody's shifting to solar, or everybody's getting an electric car, to giving all these good perspectives is also not good, because then if you have too much patience, then you know you won't move forward because people think it's going to be all right. They won't change themselves because the future will change, right? The future generations will change. So there's a dynamic balance between the two. At some moments you need to hear it's really bad. The biodiversity is really, really going in a way that we don't want it for the future generations.
Mm.
And at the same time, you need to see, so if we do this, I have like an example here of where we left nature alone and it restored within like 9 years. Then you have perspective and you know what to do if you're looking at the bad things that's going on. So I think a dynamic balance, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, in society, in German society, I watch that there is more being paralyzed than being uh, positive. And here, I think media plays a great role. And if I come back to us, because I always think it's better to start within yourself, it is our way how we use media, how we consume it. If we don't consume these always negative medias, they will change. But as long as we consume them, they think that's their business model. So,
So does it mean you don't watch the news? You don't use social media that much?
I'm very careful with social media. Um, and I read the newspaper. I listen to radio, but once or twice a day. I'm not having these push news on my smartphone where sort of wherever is a catastrophe, you get it within the minute. I don't do that. It helps me to be healthier, mentally healthier. Sure, I looked at the pictures of what happened in Turkey with the earthquake in Syria and with the drought in northern Italy. But I do this once, I breathe it in and see how I can react, but not this sort of every hour new pictures and new dramas. It's a different way of consuming news.
And I agree. I actually don't read newspapers. I don't watch the news on TV or radio. Um, I use social media carefully. I have quit Twitter, for example, and I'm using just Mastodon. I've quit with Instagram and Facebook a couple of years ago. And before that, I was really promoting Facebook, for example, how you could use it for your business. But then it was completely different time. You know, it was different. It was more like social media, like how we can exchange ideas, and it completely, you know, it's all about giving my own point of view and make it very extreme so people will read it to get attention. And it really saves my inner, you know, peace. And people say, well, if you don't read the news, you miss important information. And I disagree. If it's important enough, there's always ways I will hear from it, that, you know, that I will notice it. And at the same time, for example, I didn't dive deep into the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. But I've been reading a lot about, for example, The Life You Can Save, the book by Peter Singer, how 750 million people still live in below, you know, the wages that we should have all over the world. And I'm thinking about how can I help this instead of looking at, you know, really catastrophe or sad pictures of one person and trying to, you know, save one person. And how much can we help if we give it to people who have so much less than these people, for example, right? For example, yesterday I saw by accident, part of the news, and it was about the people that drown before the coast of Italy. And The Italian border patrol says this is the problem of the smugglers, the people smugglers. They cause this. No, we have caused this. We have made sure that we close the borders and we avoid them to come in. And this is why these smugglers thrive, because we have made it so difficult to enter our world. And we have also caused the problem in the first place, because these people live in, these circumstances that they want to get out, because we have exploited these areas. We've taken their resources. We've misused their human resources, if you want to look at it that way. So I think it is fair that we help these people instead of blaming the smugglers. These smugglers are just trying to also make a living in the situation that they are in. And why have we lost the compassion for that part? Why have we lost the compassion for these people? And that's why one of the reasons why I try not to look at the news is because it will just focus on things that in fact are not the most important things that we should focus on.
Absolutely. It's a hygiene, hygiene, and come more to the roots. Sure, I'm sure it makes sense to help the people in Syria and Turkey, but to go deeper, why are people from Africa, why can they not live or survive in their own beautiful, rich land? What has it to do with us? And how do we have to change our trade system, for example? How come we can, I know from Germans, we bring our old worn out clothes to Africa and the African clothes market is destroyed. It's incredible. So yeah, we have to go deeper and deeper. And when we can only go deeper and deeper when we are rooted within ourselves. If we practice being, to let it in, to think deeper. Here we're back with the IDGs. To really practice them on an everyday basis. I have made a little game. I have every IDG skill on a little paper, and sometimes when I come into the office, I have this basket, and I say, take out one, and then reflect. What does the skill mean for you today, and practice it?
Wonderful.
It's really it's great. Or sometimes before a meeting today, I didn't do it. I just take one and I reflect 5 minutes, and then this guides me through the whole day.
Yeah, love it, love it. And I think I just spoke last week, and she talks about the natural skills, and she says it's more fundamental than the IDGs, but I don't look at it that way. I think the IDGs is just a great framework that is very international driven. It's connected to the SDGs. It works marketing wise. You see people connect with it very easily. I don't want to promote like 12 or 13 or 18 different kind of ways to do this, because it makes it's confusing. But at the same time, I also think, so how can I implement this in a between brackets, like between quotes, commercial way? Because if we and that's what I'm asking. It's going to be my question, right? So if we could use the IDGs in like a commercial way and make it like a package or a product that we can sell to companies, how they can do this. You gave a great example. You have all the skills there, and you can just do this. But these kind of examples, and I called something like IDGs habits, right? So create like a daily habit that you can work on one of the skills on a consistent base, so they become like habits for you. So how could we do this in a way that company owners or management teams will embrace them, because they have like tools on how to do this? And it's not going to be like a framework which is going to be interesting, but they don't know how to implement it in their business.
Mhm.
Do you understand my question?
I think you will realize from the answer
Yeah.
whether I understood it.
Yeah.
And my answer starts with what I said about my time in the States to learn not to. I I think if we make out of the IDGs a business, we're lost.
Hmm.
And that's what I think is so great by those who started the whole thing. And it's an open source. It is really every person you feel who is open, start talking about it. And even if you don't call it IDG 1 or 2, or if you talk about perspective in meetings, when I hear somebody says, no, that's not right, I just say, yeah, I can understand that from your perspective, it is not right. But first, let's find out why this person is saying that. And then at the end, I said, this is something I learned and I'm training within the framework of IDG. So I make them curious. I think we have to make people more curious instead of saying, this is how you should do it. Make them curious to come to this inner development. My development by school and it was always outer. But now we have to invite people to come to inner development. And if it's this one thing about perspective thinking or about starting a meeting with 3 minute silence or that's what makes the difference. So I'm not working with a concept.
Great insights.
I use it whenever I feel it's the right moment.
Right.
And mention it, and I try to make the people curious to find out more about it. And that's so great about the IDGs. You can do so much. There's so much open source, the toolkit, and these regular meetings, and you just have to enter. And it takes time. Within my team of 17 people, not everybody is yet really deep into it, but more and more.
Nice. Thank you for that perspective. And I think that and I think that is my journey that I'm going through at the moment. I always try to when I'm so enthusiastic about a topic like this, I try to promote the topic as much as I can. And then people ask how, and I think about ways to do this, and I think of products. This is how my brain works. It just goes in that direction. And I also remember in the meeting that we had, the practitioners meeting, that Patrick talked about the way that he did this. Right, he had this team where with a client where he went through like a couple of sessions with them, and he didn't talk about IDGs. He just went through the sessions and integrate the IDGs without mentioning. And in the end, he mentioned, so these are the IDGs, and they go like, oh, that sounds familiar. That's something we just did. So I think that is a great way, but I that's my own. That's why I'm asking these questions, by the way. I'm looking for clarity. I'm looking for development. I'm looking for how can I do this? How can I make this work so that more people will learn about this, more people understand, and maybe I could train the patience part a bit.
Maybe a bit. And maybe you said before it's the balance. Maybe you feel you have a meeting next week and you want to introduce it with a little talk or with a PowerPoint. Do it. There is no wrong and right. You have to find your being, and maybe sometimes you realize, oh, they didn't really catch. Okay, next time.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Well, I've tried what I did is with a couple of sessions, with coaching sessions, I've when they have like a conversation about one of their team members, and they talked about the ideas that they have with them for a communication or a conversation with them. And I mentioned, so if you maybe could use like this framework and see and ask them, so what is the skill that you think you need to develop, and you have this framework at hand, so you can select, so there's like guidance in that conversation. And then you can ask, so how do you think that you can develop the skill? How could we together organize this? So this is also something I did. So I'm experimenting.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we should come back to more experimenting. If we remember when we were younger child, we tried this and that, and it is still with us, but our education is sort of target oriented. Come, let's experiment. I actually thought our discussion was a little, we experiment, we exchanged. So it's really, this is the way we should talk.
Yeah, I agree. I think that do you know Nora Bateson? She's also in Sweden, I believe. Yeah, pretty sure she's in Sweden.
No.
I think she's American. Nora Bateson talks about warm data, and I haven't worked with the concept myself, but I learned about it from a friend. And she says, the Nora Bateson says, the biggest way, the best way to learn, to acquire new knowledge, is to have dialogues, right? So if you try to internalize things and just learn on your own, you have this you're in a tunnel. You're always inside your own world, so
Yeah.
there's no way to really
Yeah.
learn. So if you have like dialogues with people and you can have a good dialogue, then you will learn, because you see
Hmm.
other people's perspectives. You have to defend your own perspective, because then you have to learn how to defend your perspective, and not maybe defending, but explaining is, I think, is a better word. And then this will really, this will give you new knowledge.
Hmm.
So I like that part. And that's, I think, exactly the reason why I have these conversations, because these dialogues help me to
Yeah.
learn and to
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And it help, they also help your guests.
Hopefully.
Yes, they do.
And hopefully also listeners, right? So I always say this. There's three reasons I do this podcast. And the first reason is very selfish. I learn. So I ask questions and I learn about things that I don't know enough about. So I invite guests that I think I should learn about. The second one is I give um, the guest a platform that they can talk about their topic and tell more about people about this idea. And the third one is hopefully one person picks up on this and learns something from it and will use it from then on. That's enough for me. That's plenty. So there's no other. It's like before, right? Less is
That's
more.
very complex, very full. Great concept,
Yeah,
Erno.
yeah. Well, I think it was a wonderful conversation, a good dialogue where I learned a lot from you, gave me a new perspective about creating products and thinking about how to implement the IDGs instead of just creating commercial kind of products. Try to make it like experiment and find ways to implement it and integrate it. So that was a great learner for me. Also, I'll like the skills, like practical skills, learning again to get back to basics and experience the enough feeling. It was a good insight for me too. So it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you for that one, Ray.
Thank you, Erno. And for this week, I will reflect more on the topic enough. Thank you so much.